Iran is directly accusing Israel of weekend sabotage at one of its nuclear plants and saying it will retaliate. Tehran claims Israel carried out, quote, a terrorist act yesterday by causing a power blackout that damaged equipment for enriching uranium. Iran's president had only unveiled the new installation on Saturday in a virtual ceremony. Now, the incident is threatening ongoing talks aimed at restoring the Iran nuclear agreement with the United States and other nations, and it's happening just as the U.S. Defense Secretary becomes the highest-ranking Biden administration official to visit Israel so far. Our senior Washington editor, Lindsay Duncombe, she is with me now watching the developments on this. Really, the finger-pointing is underway. Lindsay, what do we know what really happened at that Iranian nuclear facility?
Well, it appears the damage, Heather, was extensive. There's a report in the New York Times this morning that says that this was a deliberate explosion that ended up destroying the internal power structure of this underground facility responsible for enriching uranium. Iran, as you mentioned, has pointed the finger at Israel, saying that this is an act of nuclear terrorism. No official word from Israel as to be expected, but there are several reports that this is the doing of Mossad, the Israeli intelligence agency. And Israel has been responsible for sabotage like this before, including the assassination of a top Iranian scientist late last year. What this all does is really elevate tensions between these two countries that have been involved in essentially this shadow war at a really critical time, because those talks around the 2015 nuclear agreement were set to continue this week. And as you mentioned, the Defense Secretary for the United States is in Israel at the moment. But this is all delicate because the U.S. and Iran in these talks aren't even talking to each other. So any incident does indeed threaten to, disrupt the delicate nature of those discussions.
So what is likely to happen then if they were set to continue this week? Will they, in fact, Lindsay?
Well, I think it depends a lot on what exactly Iran means when it says what retaliation will be. It's been interesting to listen to the words coming out of the White House, Heather, staying very clear of any kind of adjective or judgment. The Biden administration just saying that they are aware that the United States was not involved. But as we saw the Defense Secretary of the United States land in Israel, it was very clear from his Israeli counterpart that the Iran nuclear deal will be part of these discussions between the two countries. Israel doesn't like the deal. It worries that enriching any uranium, which there were caps and limits on in the previous agreement, is dangerous for Israel over fears of a nuclear weapon, which of course Iran always insists it doesn't want to make. The bottom line is there is not a whole lot of trust here. Here is how the Israeli defense minister brought up Iran in those initial comments to the media earlier.
The Tehran of today poses a strategic threat to international security, to the entire Middle East, and to the State of Israel. And we will work closely with our American allies to ensure that any new agreement with Iran will secure the vital interest of the world.
Now, no one expects that these talks are going to be resolved anytime soon, Heather, because the reality is that the best case scenario here is that what these diplomats meeting in Vienna come up with is some kind of roadmap about how to talk next. So this certainly just adds another layer of complication to a very complicated and dangerous situation.
Lindsay, thank you very much. Senior Washington editor Lindsay Duncombe.